Hi everybody! So in this video we are going to be solidifying our understanding of the idea of higher order derivatives. And what I really want to focus on in this video is the notation that we use to indicate that we have different levels of derivatives. We have different what are called orders of derivatives. So even though we've talked about this a little bit before, we're going to really focus on this now. When we take the derivative of a function more than one time, we call these derivatives higher order derivatives. Each order of derivative tells us something different about the original function. For example, the first derivative tells us about the slope of the original function. Later on, we're going to learn that the second derivative tells us about a different aspect of the original function. So it's important to make sure that we use the correct notation so that we know which derivative we're working with, because each one means something different when we apply it to analyzing the original. So let's talk about notation. If the original equation starts with a y, like y equals, then for the first derivative you would write y prime. For the second derivative you could do y double prime. The third derivative, you would do y triple prime. And then anything beyond that, we usually just put a little number. Whatever the number is, we put it in parentheses. So yn, the nth derivative. Now, if the original started with y, another way you could indicate you took the derivative is to write dy over dx. If you do that, then the second derivative would be d squared y over dx squared. The third derivative would be d cubed y over dx cubed. And any derivative beyond that, you would just put the little derivative order like n in between the d and the y, and then after the x to show which level order of derivative you're taking. If the original was f of x, then we usually write f prime of x for the first derivative, f double prime of x for the second derivative, f triple prime of x for the third derivative, and anything beyond that we usually just put it in a little parentheses. So if it was a 4, we just put a little 4 in the parentheses. What we're going to do now is find some derivatives, making sure we're using correct notation just to practice the notation here. So for problem number 1, it says find the first 3 derivatives for the following functions. So the first derivative here, I would just use the power rule. So I would have 27x to the 8th plus 35x to the 4th. For the second derivative here, I would have 27 times 8, which is 216x to the 7th, I believe. 8 times 7 is 56, carry the 5, 16, yeah. And then plus 35 times 4 would be 140. X to the third, and for the third derivative I would have y triple prime. I would drop the 7, so let's see, 2 carry the 4, 11 carry the 1, 15, 12, plus carry the 1, so 420x squared. For problem number 2, my first derivative would be cosine. My second derivative would be negative sine. My third derivative would be negative cosine, and then I'd be done. And finally, let's say I told you that the first derivative, dy over dx, is this function. Find the second derivative. So we would just take the derivative again, which means we would have to use quotient rule. So low d high, which would be 18x to the 5th, minus high, which means 3x to the 6th plus 8, d low, so 20x to the 4th, and low squared, which is 4x to the 5th minus 1, goes down below. All right, that's it. It's really just about notation, and we will start learning something new for Chapter 3 tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you then.